Welcome to Musings from Arledge. Well, the undefeated season is over. That's not a huge surprise. It's hard to go undefeated in college football. It's hard to win on the road. It's especially hard to win on the road against a good team. And Utah's a good team, certainly offensively. And in an atmosphere like that, road games are always tough. And USC did a lot to make their case a little bit more difficult anyway. But let's be honest, there's something else going on. Because it's especially difficult to win a game on the road against a good team when the officials gift the other team 2 touchdowns. And anybody who watched that Utah game and is going to be honest with themselves knows that's exactly what happened. The officials took away a Kalen Bullock interception early in the game on a ridiculous roughing the passer penalty. That interception likely would have led to a 21-0 USC lead. Later, with SC up 35-28, they get a big stop on 3rd down, and once again, the refs call an absolutely indefensible roughing the passer penalty, which led directly to Utah's tying score. Now here's the thing, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It'd be easy to look at those calls and say the Pac-12 is getting its revenge. I don't think that's true. I don't think this is about USC leaving the conference. It's not about corruption or bias. It's about good old-fashioned incompetence. For years, everybody even marginally associated with Pac-12 football has recognized that the conference's officials are an embarrassment. Week after week, year after year, these guys pull up to stadiums throughout the conference in a clown car, all 7 stuffed in the same VW Bug. They get out, start a grease fire, and then the conference pretends that everything's okay. It wasn't just the roughing the passer penalties, although those were the 2 that probably decided the game. Remember, it took the officials 5 minutes and a replay to figure out what down it was. They then tried to run 10 seconds off the clock against Utah because the officials decided to conduct a review and then chose, for reasons nobody will ever understand, to penalize Utah for that. They also told the clock operator to stop the clock in the middle of a play, a Utah interception return, merely because a penalty flag was thrown on the play. You put all this together, it doesn't tell you bias, it tells you gross incompetence. The officiating Saturday in Salt Lake City was a joke. And look, this happens over and over and over again, and nobody in the Pac-12 conference ever fixes the problem. Listen, I don't expect perfection from Pac-12 officials. At this point, I don't even expect a good job. All that I expect is that they don't decide football games with their idiocy. I want the players to decide things like conference titles and college football playoff berths. And that doesn't really happen when officials make critical, game-changing calls that everybody in the stadium knows are absurd. And if they can keep track of what down it is, that would be cool too. Now, Pac-12 officials, I'm trying not to be overly harsh with you guys. I know it's not really your fault. Most of you guys were just hanging around in a soup kitchen on a Saturday afternoon, and a Pac-12 official comes in and asks if anybody's willing to work for 4 hours in exchange for a $10 Taco Bell gift certificate. And I understand why you might accept that offer. Yes, I'm tired of watching your shenanigans. I want it to stop. But I know it's not really your fault. George Kliavkoff, look at me. It's your fault. It's your fault that the Pac-12 continues to hire officials that simply aren't qualified to do their job. Putting these guys on the field on Saturdays is like expecting Clay Helton and the Kardashians to run a nuclear reactor. It's like asking Pat and Sark to keep an eye on the liquor cabinet for you. It doesn't make any sense. We know from the outset they're not qualified to do that job. George, listen to me. This is very important. Fire those guys. Fire all of them. Fire them right now. Send out your talent scouts to the local Pop Warner games next week and hire whatever plumbers and accountants happen to be volunteer officials for the 8-year-old games. We'll take them. Whatever their experience, whatever their level of competence, we'll take them. I won't even complain. Whatever they do, I'm okay with. I just don't want the other guys anymore. Please. Now understand, USC lost not just because of the officials, although that was a gigantic part of it, But if your back seven lets the same guy catch ball after ball after ball, if your front seven comes up with 0 sacks and 1 tackle for loss, you've obviously played a pretty big role in your own demise. It is what it is. I never expected this team to go undefeated, and the Trojans are still set to finish the season in strong fashion. They have a bye this week, and then 3 consecutive byes after that. Yes, I said it. Colorado, Cal, and Arizona are like byes. They're awful. USC isn't losing any of those games. And listen, I know this is coming, so I'm going to try to stop you right now. I do not need a string of comments on YouTube telling me that I shouldn't overlook any opponent. I see this all the time, and I want you to understand, I don't play the games. Neither do you. Your lucky shirt does nothing. Your focus on the game plan, completely ineffective. I don't care if you're taking Cal seriously or not as you sit in your recliner. It doesn't matter if I overlook the Arizona Wildcats. I could stay out all night before the game, get so drunk I can't remember my own name. I could wake up on a pool table in the middle of the second quarter, and it still won't impact the outcome of the game. So please, don't send me those silly comments about not overlooking anybody. Don't want to hear it. I can overlook anybody I want. And it seems to me that Colorado, Cal, and Arizona are pretty good teams to overlook because they are really bad at football. What this means is that USC will be 9-1 when they head to the Rose Bowl to face their crosstown rival. That's just how it's going to be. And all things considered, especially in light of where we've been, I'll take it. And speaking of those crosstown rivals, the Powder Blues have a huge matchup next week in what is possibly the biggest Meteor game of the year. In his farewell address, George Washington warned the United States against any permanent foreign alliances. Our friends and enemies, he said, would depend on whatever our interests happen to be at that time. In other words, you don't know who you'll have to root for. And Washington might have had this coming week in mind when he uttered that part of his address. There are college football games I don't care about. Lots of them. Teams where both teams are terrible. It doesn't affect USC. Doesn't matter to me. Then there are games where there's a team that I hate playing. Alabama's on TV. OU has a game. Easy call. Let the hate flow. And then you have Meteor games, where there's absolutely nobody to root for, and it would just be best for the entire world if a meteor were to crash into the stadium during the game. A meteor took away the dinosaurs? That's not cool. But if a meteor also takes away UCLA and Oregon, they kind of made up for it. We'll call it even, meteors. One stray rock from outer space and the sun would shine just a little bit brighter. The birds would sing just a little bit louder. We can hope for that outcome. We can pray for that outcome. But because there is still some chance that the Meteor community will fail us all this week in Eugene, I'm going to attempt something that most of you probably don't want to hear me say. Something truly courageous, my friends. Something bold. As many of you know, in my day job, I'm a trial lawyer. Sometimes my job is easier than other times. Sometimes I have a really difficult argument to make. Sometimes it's really easy. I'm not sure I've ever had an argument as difficult as the one I'm going to make now. Are you ready? I'm going to argue that USC fans should be rooting for the Bruins. I know you're upset at me. Some of you have already turned off this video. Now listen, no. I have not gone soft when it comes to the Bruins. I haven't forgotten the 8-game streak. I haven't forgotten Cade's bootleg. I haven't forgotten 50-0, or how the Bruins think punting is winning. I haven't forgotten that UCLA took one of the fiercest beasts on God's green earth as their mascot and immediately turned it into a teddy bear who wears a baby blue dress. I haven't forgotten that. And I obviously have not forgotten that UCLA football players do not have the energy to walk through a parking lot, and therefore they must steal handicapped parking spaces from people who truly need them. Yet they do have enough energy to scale the wall of their practice field to continue UCLA's most famous and frankly most fitting tradition of skipping practice. My friends, I know these things. I haven't forgotten them. The Bruins are ridiculous, I agree. Maybe by choice, probably by nature, and I haven't forgotten it. I also know that if you do what I suggest, and if you root for the Bruins this weekend, that it will feel unnatural. It is unnatural. I know you feel nauseous. I know that afterwards you'll take 5 or 6 showers in a row. I know you probably won't sleep for a week. I know you'll need therapy. I know all of those things. I really do. But sometimes there's no good outcome. And absent that Meteor, somebody will have to win Saturday in Eugene. And just like the Eastern Front in World War II, sometimes you have to just hold your nose and root for a bad guy to beat an even worse guy. And make no mistake, in this case, the Oregon Ducks are the worst guy. Some of you may not understand this. Maybe it's because you remember for all those decades where the Oregon Ducks were one of the worst programs on the West Coast. And so you felt safe just ignoring them, maybe even feeling sorry for them. Some of you hear the word ducks and you think cute, cuddly little creatures. How could you ever not like a duck? No. Granted, ducks might be small and weak. You could in fact walk down to the nearest pond and just start drop-kicking as many defenseless ducks as you want. They could do nothing about it. Kind of like what Georgia did to the Ducks earlier this year. But make no mistake, ducks aren't cuddly. They're not cute. They're not sweet. They are capable of acts of great depravity, including even murder and gang rape. And no, I'm not kidding. Look it up. This is true. This is Musings from Arledge, National Geographic version. Ducks are nasty creatures. I'm not saying that's why the University of Oregon chose ducks as their mascot. I'm also not saying it's not. Maybe it is. Here's what I do know. There are 3 really compelling reasons why USC fans should be pulling for the Bruins this Saturday. First of all, academics should matter at least a little bit, right? I mean, this is college football. These are university teams. Now, it's true, the Bruins like to trot out academics to justify their ineptitude on the recruiting trail and in the games. And that's pretty weak. Still, like USC, like Cal, obviously like Stanford, UCLA is at least a top-notch academic institution. It's at least a place where actual students who can read attend, and they can even read the big words. All else being equal, why not pull for the college that is a real, college, rather than a continuation high school located on a pot farm, a feeder school for YouPorn and social services, a school where the most popular major is major drug offenses? We don't want to pull for that. So we're better off pulling for UCLA on Saturday for that reason. But I could overlook the academics saying if I had to. We need some place for the stoner kids from high school to gather, and keeping them in Eugene, far away from civilization, certainly makes some sense. But I have a second reason. Delusion. Look, Oregon is a symbol of everything that's wrong with college football. They have no history, no tradition, no trophies in the trophy case. They have 300 uniforms. It's Oregon. Let's call them what they are. Costumes. And every single one of those costumes are ugly. Half of them don't even have the school colors. These guys are always playing dress up to convince the world that they're special and different. They just come off looking like a little boy putting on his daddy's suit. They're trying to dress a part of a big-time college football program, but the clothes don't fit. It's just not believable. In the end, Oregon is competitive only because a single rich donor spends millions to build cool buildings and put video game consoles all over the place as a way of tricking impressionable 17-year-old kids into making a bad decision. And still, they're not elite. They never will be. But their fans don't get that, and this is where we get into the delusional part. Their fans, the worst fans in college football outside of Norman, Oklahoma, think Oregon is on par with Alabama. It's only Oregon fans who have that level of delusion. The SEC of the West Coast, they like to say. And in reading comprehension scores, they're probably right. Of course, they're also headed to a new home in the Mountain West. Marketing slogan 2024, Oregon football, the Mountain West of the West. Delusions, people. Delusions are bad. It's best not to encourage those Duck fans. Finally, Let's not forget, USC still has another full season in this conference, and it's best if we can close this thing out without too much embarrassment. So let's root to avoid having a team in the conference title game that already lost 1,000-3 on national television in week 1. Let's not have a conference title game where one of the teams was already destroyed worse than Hiroshima. No, Trojan fans, it's important to do the right thing here. It's important to do the right thing even when it's hard. Go grab an air sickness bag, put it by your chair, and do your duty. Pull for the Bruins Saturday. Let's wrap this up. Back before cigarette ads were illegal, Virginia Slims developed a famous tagline, "You've come a long way, baby." And Trojan fans, we've come a long way. A very long way. Most of it, of course, in recent years at least, was a long walk through hell. But even after the tough loss at Utah, Trojan fans today are like Andy Dufresne. We crawled to freedom through 500 yards of foulness that many people can't even imagine. Or maybe they just don't want to. But we made it. We're standing in the rain, finally free of the prison that Pat Hayden and Lynn Swan had built for us. Finally ready to live a happy life fishing the waters of Mexico. Free, optimistic, and relatively healthy, only with a small case of post-Helton stress disorder that we're working on. Things aren't perfect. This week's game is going to sting for a while. But we've been through worse. So, until next week, fight on.